Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Liverpool Connection podcast. We usually do a pub chat, but obviously this is more of a Zoom. So this is a review show of West Ham and a preview of Notts Forest. And besides me and Steve today, we've got former Liverpool player Gary Gillespie, who is a regular on LFC TV. So he is going to give his insight of both of these games, and we'll start by saying, well, it's afternoon there now, so good afternoon, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, lads. It's mid-afternoon here. It's a drab, dreary kind of day. I'm sure it's not like that back over like where you are. I'm sure the sun's out shining and everybody's happy. Everybody's got a smile on their face. But I think if you're a Liverpool supporter, you've got to have a bit of a smile on your face after the two results that we've just had.
I know, and now we're three on the bounce. It feels. I don't think we're back yet. You know, we still have a lot to go, but this is a great stat to start the show off. Moyes has had 18 attempts at Anfield to win, and he's got zero, zilch, nothing. And I thought it was very funny when Milner did that block that. Moyes just fell to the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, poor bastard.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I was doing commentary for LFC TV, or co-commentary for LFC TV last night, and the commentator, John Bradley, did mention it. I think that's obviously, I'm not sure if it was 18 or 19 times he's come to Anfield and he's not been able to win. And in many ways, you kind of feel sorry for the fella because he seems a nice enough chap. They were having a big conversation before the game, him and Jurgen Klopp. I'm not 100% sure what they were talking about, but you could see like the frustration on his face. And in all fairness, I think West Ham probably second half performance might have just done enough to maybe warrant a draw out of the game. But sometimes that's what happens. If it's not going for you, then there's just it's written in the stars somewhere that that's not going to happen. And certainly he must be cursing like Anfield as a place to come and play his football.
May it long continue.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the amazing things about that stat with Moyes is that City, with their teams that they've had in the last 10 years, I don't think they've ever won in the Premier League era at Anfield. So just kind of going back to Fortress Anfield is back, and it's good to see that we can always count on a result at home.
I think the one, Steve, I think it was the year when there was no crowds in. What would that be? 2021 or 2020 or something like that. I think they came to Anfield and I think they turned us over. But I'm not sure if that was in the Premier League or if that was in a cup competition. But no, it seems to be that Liverpool have a little bit of a jinx over Manchester City, especially at Anfield. I think Klopp, his record against Pep Guardiola is a pretty good one. I think he's got 12 wins to Pep's 9 or something like that. So that's obviously over when he was with Borussia Dortmund as well as at Liverpool. So he's got quite a bit of a hold over Pep. I don't know if that counts for anything. When you're going into big games like that. But certainly it was an impressive victory at the weekend. I think it was a kind of game where I think everybody stood back and just watched it and admired the two teams that. The two teams that really have paved the way for the Premier League in the last 3 or 4 seasons. And had it not been for Liverpool, I think Manchester City would have been walking away with the Premier League. And had it not been for Manchester City, I'm sure Liverpool would have added to more than that one league title that they've actually managed to achieve.
Yeah, good point on that. They've kind of been each other's nemesis and pushed each other to higher standards, over the last 5 or 6 years. So it's good for the Premier League. It's good for footy in general, especially
not
the
for my heart.
Not for your heart, not for my liver, not for my bank account. But anyway, hey, going back to yesterday's game, I think we really in that first half saw the best of Darwin Núñez. Obviously, he took a good chance on the header. What a great cross from Tsimikas. But the other chances he created and the shots that he got off, I'm salivating to see what he's going to be able to accomplish, as we move forward. How about you, Gary?
Yeah, I think it was one of his better performances. I think what we've got to remember is he's still a young man. I think he's something like 22 or 23 years of age. He obviously came to the fore last season when he scored all these goals for Benfica. But I think what we have to remember as well, he's early at Benfica as well. I think he only had a year's full season at Benfica. So he's relatively new to the scene over here. So he's still got a long way to go. I think he's still got a lot of progression to come. But that's a good thing. I think he can only get better. But I think we saw what he can offer Liverpool going forward last night. I think that was one of his better games. I think it suits him, the formation that Liverpool played. I think with the three behind him and maybe Nunez up front on his own, it was a kind of more like a 4-2-3-1 kind of formation that Jurgen Klopp has adopted in the last couple of games. And I think that suits Nunez a little bit more because he can run the channels and find these little pockets of space. And what it does do, it gives Bobby Firmino a little bit more room to operate. And I think when he operates in these little places, little pockets of space in front of the opposition's back four and behind the opposition's midfield, then you get the best of Bobby Firmino. And there's no better player to feed these little balls down the channel for the likes of Nunez. The goal was typical Nunez for me. I think that's where he needs to be on a regular basis. Good delivery into the box. It was a decent header. And it was a good goal, and all round I thought his play was very, very good. The holding up, bringing other players into the game, I thought was exceptional. His running of the channels, his work rate, which I don't think has ever been in question, was fantastic as well. So all round, really good performance, and that will certainly, when he comes off as well, when the crowd starts singing your name, I think that boosts you and elevates you to a different level as well, and that will certainly help him going forward.
A lot of people were kind of questioning the purchase of him, and just with the early season, getting that red card that first game obviously was so detrimental to his progression and the team's progression really at that early stage. But you look at the analytics, his analytics are off the chart compared to anybody else, especially compared to per minutes played. And yeah, I think people tend to forget that Klopp has had this 4-3-3 system for years. The guys that are veterans, they know the system inside and out. They know the positioning. Even a half a yard makes a difference in that system. And to have to change it for Nunez, for him to adapt to our team, and for our team to adapt to him, there is a betting period. And I think people kind of lose sight. They just want instant gratification all the time, and it's a progress. But I think at the end of the day, Klopp is going to make it work, and I can't see where it ends up at the end of the season. So
yeah, I think it's difficult always bringing new players in and trying to integrate them into a formation. That's why I think that he's kind of changed it a little bit to play him more as a lone striker as opposed to playing like that one through the middle with two at the side. Don't get me wrong, Liverpool are so fluid that you will see changes, and you'll see changes in formation where you will see Mohamed Salah play maybe even alongside Darwin Nunez, through the centre. I think we saw that at the weekend when he scored his goal against Manchester City. So I think they're very fluid. For me, the key is Bobby Firmino. I think Bobby Firmino, for me, plays well. Liverpool tend to play well. And as I say, for probably about 18 months, he's probably one thing or another, maybe going away on international duty, getting injured. He's not really been quite at his best, but certainly at the start of this season, I think we've seen the best of Bobby Firmino, and I think long may that continue, because if that happens, then I think Liverpool can have a good season.
One of the things you can tell the impact of a player, not just when he's on the pitch, but when he's taken off. I mean, that game yesterday against West Ham totally changed once Nunez came off and Thiago came off. And so I think that's one of maybe the areas of concern for Klopp, to make sure that the standards don't dip that much, because we're kind of under the cosh when those changes were made in the last 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah, I think when you look at the game, I analysed it, and I say watching it, first 45 minutes, probably the first 43 minutes, we probably dominated the game entirely. West Ham were really never really in the game, didn't really get it forward that much, and didn't really trouble Alisson at all. Then just before half time, obviously the penalty decision happens. West Ham have a couple of little half chances after that as well. So in the space of 3-4 minutes before half time, West Ham had that belief that they could possibly get back in the game. They come out second half, Liverpool were a little bit flat, and the second half didn't really go according to plan from Klopp's point of view, how I saw it anyway. We're a little bit flat. I think the substitutions that he brought on were to liven the thing up a little bit. I think we lost our way a little bit, and maybe tired legs from the weekend, such an intense game at the weekend. You try to freshen it up. It didn't quite manage to hold on. But as I say, I think David Moyes will look at that and think that the performance and opportunities they had just before half time, and obviously through the second half, that he might have felt that they could have got some out of the game. But in saying that, for long spells in the first half, Liverpool certainly dominated and should have really added to their goal tally. And had they got that second goal, then I think the game would have been over a long time before it was. I think when you look at the Premier League, and we see it, and we've watched it for a long time now, and always like one goal is never quite enough. You're never quite sure like what can happen, and that kind of the penalty just before half time emphasises that. Fantastic save by Alisson Becker. But that goes in. It's a totally different ball game in the second half, and it's fine margins. But hopefully, we can keep on the right side of these fine margins.
Yeah, I think Klopp had to make those changes as well, because we are playing 3-4 days later. That's got to be in the back of his head. If you have, like we had Núñez, Bobby, and Salah on, he's got to be thinking also, I cannot afford to have another one get injured. And we're hearing, he took Núñez off because of a little slight hammy strain. So Klopp's got to be really careful with that. And, yes, we want the best team out there for 90 minutes, but he's got to make these changes. And one player who I'm not figuring out at the moment is Fabinho. Is it from a long season? Is it just there's no confidence in him at the moment? Because it just seems every time he's playing, he's lagging a bit.
He's one of these unfortunate players that he's quite a tall, kind of gangly individual, a bit like similar to myself. And when you're not quite at it, when you're not quite up to pace, you can become and look a little bit leggy. And I think what he's doing is at this moment in time, he's looking a little bit leggy. There's just that split second where he might just be a split second behind the tackle or like a challenge, and he's not quite getting in the same amount of challenges as probably what he used to do. But I still think he's an integral part to the way that Liverpool want to play. He's got a good record when he plays alongside Thiago as well. Listen, class is permanent, form is temporary. I think we've seen it in the past that he's a class individual. I've no worries about Fabinho. I'm sure he'll come back to somewhere like his best. I mean, he's not played dreadfully, but poorly. But when you're just off that pace, especially in the area of the pitch where he plays, it can show up a little bit, and you end up giving like niggly little free kicks away just because you're that fraction short of making your challenges.
He was pretty immense against City, so I'm going to chalk yesterday's performance just being a little tired. Still trying to get back into fitness, but I expect as he works through that, because he was such an integral part of that victory over City on the weekend. So let's hope that he continues to regain that form that we're so accustomed to. Another person that came back into the pitch yesterday, was Curtis Jones, and it was good to see him. I know he's been so unlucky with injuries throughout his young career, so it's good to see him on there and get some playing time, because we're going to need everybody as we move into this really heavy period before the World Cup.
Well, the one thing that you will do is you'll have to utilise the whole of your squad, and it's a big plus having Curtis Jones fit. It's an interesting one with Curtis Jones, isn't it? Because when you think about him busting onto the scene, 2-3 years ago, maybe about 2 seasons ago, he played quite a bit through COVID, the COVID times. Yeah. Mainly, I think, because there was a lot of injuries for Liverpool at that time, so that gave him quite an extended run in the team. He's picked up his injuries since then. And what you have to say is the likes of Harvey Elliott and the likes of Carvalho are probably past them in ranks of in terms of ranking to play from the start in the start 11. So I think he's got it all to do, Curtis Jones, to prove to the manager and prove to maybe himself and the fans a little bit as well. Is he good enough to start a game on a regular basis? I hope he gets back to somewhere like his best, but it won't happen automatically. He'll have to play his way in. But in saying that, he'll have plenty of opportunity to do that. It's a busy month, then you're into November, obviously the break for the World Cup after that. So hopefully before the World Cup, he gets back to somewhere like full fitness and he's pushing for a regular start in the first 11. Because as you rightly say, Steve, I think Jurgen Klopp's going to need all the squad members that he possibly can get fit and ready to go. Because like Liverpool at this moment in time, unfortunately, we're playing catch up with the rest of the teams in the Premier League above us, and we can't really afford to slip up. And as I say, I think he'll have to refresh it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think one of the most frustrating things at the moment is we get like one or two players back for a week, and then we get another injured player, then another injured player. It's not like we've had a full squad to work with since day one. And it is frustrating as a fan, but it's got to be frustrating for Klopp and the players as well. Like, there's a lot of people that, you know, have a go at Ox. And he's not one to... He's a good player when he's on form. And I'm sure he doesn't want to be injured as well. A lot of people call him and Keita sick notes, you know, always injured. But the lad, I'm sure, gives 110% in training. And for me, to have him back in the squad is a positive.
Oh, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned before, like about Curtis Jones, I think it's a positive having everybody fit. It's an unfortunate thing. I mean, I was pretty similar in my career that, you know, I had one bad injury, a knee injury, which after that, it kind of put me back quite a bit. And every time I was out quite a regular like occurrence after that, because of like things were going like wrong with my hamstring or my thigh or my calf. And it was never quite sorted. And it's so frustrating from a player's point of view that, you know, you're coming back into the side, you've got to do your rehab to get fit. You come back into the side, you maybe play 2 or 3 games, something else goes, and then you're back to square one. So I do feel for the likes of like Oxlade-Chamberlain, the likes of Naby Keita. I thought Joel Matip had probably got over that last season because he played a number of games. But again, it looks as if he's going to pick up a few injuries as well. So you've got these 3 players there that are pretty, you know, Matip certainly top quality player. You can't argue with that. When he played last season, I thought early on in the season he was probably one of our best players, if not our best player. Picks up injuries on a regular basis. Naby Keita certainly picks injuries up on a regular basis, and Oxlade-Chamberlain is another one as well. So it's unfortunate that you've got like 3 real quality individuals there that you're not 100% sure that you're guaranteed that you're going to get a full season out of them. So you were talking about how Klopp needed to refresh it at half-time, or like just after half-time at West Ham. I think you see more and more and more of that, to be quite honest with you, because these players are going into the red zone, that they like to call it. And, you know, they're open to injury towards the end of the game. Jota's a little bit a bit the same as well. He's picked up a few injuries since he's come to the football club as well. So it's never ideal, but it's something that, you know, you can't blame the players for. It's just one of these things that happen in football. I always remember Phil Neal. I think Phil Neal played something like 420 odd games or something, like consecutive games, never missed a game through injury. Yet, you know, you have the likes of myself, the likes of Stephen Warnock, and I'm trying to think who else, but like picked up injuries on a regular basis. It's just in your makeup, it's in your genes, it's in your DNA, and it's one of these things that unfortunately you can't do much about. And especially from a player's point of view, it's frustrating. From a manager's point of view, I suppose it's equally frustrating as well for them.
You know, Gary, I wanted to switch topics there. You know, when you were playing, obviously you were playing with Bruce Garpelar, you know, one of the greatest keepers in, you know, LFC history. Now, as you get to watch up close, you know, Alisson Becker, just his abilities, you know, as a shot stopper, but just his presence on that back line. How does that, you know, make the defense better, in your opinion, you know, when they're playing in front of him?
Well, let me go on record as saying he's probably the best I've ever seen. Certainly the best Liverpool goalkeeper I've ever seen. And I include the likes of Ray Clements in that. I didn't really see Ray play too many times for Liverpool, but I certainly played against him on a couple of occasions. The game was probably a little bit different then. I mean, like, I think when Ray started, he probably didn't even have goalkeeping gloves to wear. So, like, that shows how different it was. But Alisson is such a calming influence. I think that now the fact that when you can, you know, the goalkeeper obviously can't pick the ball up when you pass it back to him. Where in my day, that was part and parcel like being a goalkeeper, and part and parcel being a defender. It was a great get-out ball that you could pass it back to the goalkeeper and he could pick it up. So I think it's changed goalkeeping quite a bit. And all these goalkeepers nowadays, you have to see they've got to be comfortable in possession of the football. And that's one thing he is. He's very comfortable in the possession of the football, to the fact where sometimes he just is overconfident and maybe just puts the willies up us a little bit. But in saying that, he brings a calmness to the back four that is well needed. And plus the fact that the way that Liverpool play with that high line, one-on-one situations, he must make at least, 25, 30 saves a season on one-on-one situations, where, if you lose these on a regular basis, you're losing a heck of a lot of goals. I don't think he makes the spectacular save too many times because his positioning is that good, and Liverpool don't really concede that kind of like these kind of shots at goal. But what he does do, he makes everything look so simple and so easy. And I think when you look at any sportsman, whether it be golf, whether it be tennis, whether it be football, the beauty about like top sportsmen is when we're watching them, we think we could do it as easily as them, but you can't. But they make it look so easy that you just think that everybody could do it. But that's not always the case. Well, it's never the case, to be quite honest with you.
Well, it goes like for a good goalkeeper, though, you've got to have a good back four in front of you as well. And it looks like Verge is nearly back to his best, which is great to see. And I'm so happy for Gomez. People had written him off. He'd played right back a few times, but he is a centre back. And a few seasons ago, before the injury at Burnley, Gomez and Verge were like rocks. And I think you're seeing that again. And it would be nice if Konaté and Matip come back for Gomez to keep his place.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I think you had the one poor game was, I think, the game against Napoli where he was like a little bit exposed. But as we've seen, Napoli can do that to teams. We've seen that like when they went to Ajax and like battered Ajax, battered Rangers as well, doing exceptionally well in Serie A. So they're top side, Napoli. Joe Gomez is, again, you throw him into that pot where he picks up a lot of injuries as well. And when he goes out, like he seems to be out for a wee while, we were talking about Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk being the bedrock of Liverpool centre-back for years to come. And then he obviously picked up a couple of injuries and he goes out. And he wasn't quite the same when he first came back. But I think he's picked up his speed. I think when you look at him, he has to be considered for like going to the World Cup for England, I would have thought. If he keeps the form up that he's shown at this moment in time, I thought he played exceptionally well at the weekend. Played reasonably well last night. It was just that one lapse of concentration where he gave the penalty away. But unfortunately, that's the kind of thing, like when you're a defender, that's the kind of thing that gets highlighted a little bit. But there's no doubt his quality. He's got all the attributes. He's decent in the air. He's quick. He reads the situation and he can play as well. The beauty I think that he's got, or like the one plus that he's got as well, the fact that he can play at fullback as well. And I think that might be the case where we see in certain games, Gomez might come in and like play right fullback, depending obviously the fitness of Matip and the fitness of Konaté as well. But certainly top individual, lovely bloke as well, deserves a break. And as you rightly say, that it would be something to think that if everybody was fit, he could maintain his place alongside Virgil van Dijk. But he'll only maintain his place if he keeps the performances up that he's shown in the last 2 or 3 games.
Hey Gary, you had referenced earlier that when you were playing kind of tall, lanky, kind of like a Fabinho type, and you watch Thiago on the pitch. Obviously on the shorter side, not the fastest guy in the world, but do you get as much enjoyment as I do when I'm watching him play? I mean, I can just sit there because we're about the same size and I play the same position. But I was like, man, if only, Well,
to be honest with you, from day one, I just you doff your cap to him. To be quite honest with you, he's got like so much ability. When you remember when he first came into the side, everybody was like talking about how he slowed the game down and everything like that. And I'm looking at him thinking, what are these guys watching? What are they seeing? I mean, like, how does he slow the game down? Because he's slow, he slows the game down. He can't run. Let's get this right out there. He can't run, but he doesn't need to run because his brain is so much quicker than everybody else's on the field. And in that position, you can maybe get away with the fact that if you've got Fabinho around you and the fact that you've got Henderson, I wouldn't say Fabinho's the best athlete in the world, but he'll get in your tackles and he'll get close to people. Henderson's certainly a great athlete and gets about the pitch. So you have to have that little bit of creativity. And I mean, what better player to have that that ability? I mean, he's fantastic, to be quite honest with you. His vision, his range of passing, he splits the lines on a regular basis with his passes, and he's so comfortable in possession. And from a centre-back's point of view or a defender's point of view, when you're passing that ball into midfield, you want to know that you can pass that with confidence, that it's not going to bounce back off that player that you're passing it to, or he's not going to get caught in possession. He's going to maintain possession. He's going to get things started and make things tick. And when he's at his best, which I think for the first 45 minutes of that game last night, you know, he bossed the midfield alongside Jordan Henderson. They bossed that midfield. They allowed him too much space, certainly in West Ham, I thought. And if you allow that, then you're asking for trouble. He's a quality individual. The fact that he's maybe just at the back end of his career is a little bit of a disappointment for the Liverpool supporters. Had he maybe come 2 or 3 years earlier, then you know we would have been talking about Alonso, Steven Gerrard, and I'm sure Thiago in all the same sort of breath that these two guys were held in.
I think we need to give a massive mention to that old man, James Milner again. So many people have written him off, Liverpool fans. I mean, when his name came up on the team sheet against Man City, I'll be the first one as well to put my hand up going, oh no, you know, because you're thinking Grealish, Foden, and he had them in his pocket for the whole game. And then for him to come on last night, and he did the job as well, a goal line clearance. Like, the man he's like an Energizer bunny. He just keeps on going and going. And I am so happy that he's probably the best free transfer that Liverpool have ever had.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm right in saying he's played more times for Liverpool than he's played for any other club. So, you know, when you think of the clubs that he's had, like Newcastle, Manchester City, Aston Villa, Leeds, I mean, all massive clubs, to be quite honest with you. And then it comes to Liverpool and you think, well, he's in the twilight of his career. I'm not quite sure what age he was when he came to Liverpool, but he was certainly in his 30s. And you're thinking, what can he offer and what can he give Liverpool? Well, I think we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years what he offers you. I think the fullback position is not a position he likes to play. He's played right fullback, he's played left fullback. He wants to play in the centre of the park. He wants to be in midfield. He wants to be involved in the game. But I think with the way Liverpool play, fullback positions, you know, you can get involved in the game. And I think when you look at, I think a lot of the fans, if not all of the fans, the Man City game probably looked at that and thought the season before Foden gave him a little bit of a torrid time, to be quite honest with you, when he played fullback. But at the weekend, I thought he played exceptionally well. And as you rightly said, that's when he comes on, makes that block. And it wasn't quite obvious, to be quite honest with you, like when we first saw it. You thought that, try to think who it was that was with him that had the chance. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, it was him that got the block. And had he not been there, then I'm sure it was going to be a goal. I think it was Kushak, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I had the opportunity. So, you know, I think from a manager's point of view, I think players like James Milner are worth their weight in gold because you know exactly what you're going to get from them. They're not the flashiest. They're not like the most explosive or he's not a Thiago, put it that way. He doesn't thrill and exude class and everything like that. But what he gives you is 110% work rate on a regular basis, regardless of where he's playing on the pitch. And as I say, from a manager's point of view, I think that's it's something that managers would love. Plus the fact he's a good influence off the field as well in the dressing room, the way he goes about his business and the way he can G young players up as well. And there's no coincidence, I think, that when you see senior players alongside these, like the likes of Harvey Elliott and the likes of Carvalho, I mean, they're learning off the best, and the likes of Jordan Henderson and the likes of James Milner, without any shadow of a doubt.
Hey, Gary, before we talk about, Forest game for the weekend, yesterday we're playing, West Ham, and we see Declan Rice up close. He's been connected with, transfer rumors to us, for the past couple of seasons. you know, obviously the conventional wisdom is that we have all our eggs in the Jude Bellingham basket, right? But how do you rate Declan Rice? Because I think he's a very good player. He probably would work in our midfield, taking over like the number 8 spot, as Henderson, gets ages out. So what do you think about him?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I don't see West Ham on a regular basis. So I don't see Declan Rice on a regular basis. All I see is like the highlights, maybe match of the day or something like that. So it's difficult to have an opinion about him. What I do see, I like. I think he's a good player. I think he looks calm in possession of the football. He wants to make the moves. He wants to pass the ball forward. I think he's got more athletic as he's got older. I think West Ham restrain him a little bit because he seems to want, they seem to want him to play in that number 6 role where he's a holding midfield player, where I think he's got a little bit more about him than maybe just that. I think he could get forward and be a little bit more creative and be a little bit more of a goal threat. Now, if he was to sign for Liverpool, I wouldn't be sorry to see that, to be quite honest with you. I think he would be a plus. And I think as a football club, you have to evolve and you have to look at like these sort of players. And, where would he fit in our midfield? Would he be a Thiago? Would he be a Fabinho? Or would he be a Jordan Henderson? Well, I think he could play probably all of these positions, to be quite honest with you. I think he's that talented. He fits the bill with regards to the philosophy that the owners want to have. He's young. It costs a hell of a lot of money. That's the only thing that you would have to say. I mean, there's a lot of speculation in the paper over here, like whether Liverpool throw all their eggs in like 2 baskets and go for Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice. Purely and simply because I think the fact that they look at Liverpool's midfield and they look at like the age of Thiago, the age of Fabinho, and the age of Jordan Henderson, all in their 30s. I think I'm right in saying Fabinho might not be just there yet or something, but he's there or thereabouts. So how do you evolve that? How do we go from that midfield 3 to the next generation? Is it going to be a Harvey Elliott? Is it going to be a Carvalho? I'm not 100% sure. I think you probably need a little bit of strengthening in there. So Declan Rice, I think, would certainly be one to be on the radar. If I was being manager, if I was part of the recruitment, then I certainly would be looking at a player of that sort of ilk and that sort of ability. The only downside is what you'd say, like when you buy players from other English clubs, they tend to be a heck of a lot of money, and I'm not 100% sure that Liverpool would be willing to go to that length or that extent.
Obviously, yeah, I agree with you on all those points. As we move into the weekend, we're playing Forest. A lot of old-time English fans, they were very happy when Nottingham Forest got promoted. The 2-time European champion coming back to the top flight. It just hasn't worked out for them. They're in 19th place. The worst goals against in the league. How do you see us setting up, and what do you expect? Your expectations out of the game?
Well, I think there'll be changes from what we saw at the starting 11 against West Ham. I think that's inevitable. Who will come in? I'm not 100% sure at this moment in time. I think Forest's start to the season was always going to be a difficult one. They had a lot of players on loan last season that they lost at the beginning of the season, so they had to replenish. And I think it's something like 60 new players or something like that they've actually signed from the start of the season. So that always takes time to bed in and get a format or a policy or a philosophy how you're going to play and get these players to buy into the manager's ideas. I think they're a dangerous side. I think he wants to play football the right way. He's not one of these managers that has come into the Premier League and thought like, all we've got to do is shut up shop and like make it difficult for the opposition. And that probably, when you think about teams that have done that in the past, like the likes of Norwich, I'm trying to think who else maybe that's done that. Sometimes it doesn't work for you. And at this moment in time, it doesn't seem to have worked for Forest. But as I say, it's still early days because there's so many new players there that who knows, it might be a month or two before it clicks. And They've had a couple of good results. I think they had a draw recently, didn't they? The last game they played, they managed to get a draw. They're off the bottom at this moment in time, I think. But, you know, it's going to be a tough old season for them. I think they were under no illusions when they came up. I don't think it was all going to be milk and honey in the Premier League. Championship teams, when they do get promoted, do tend to find it difficult, and that's exactly what's happening. But I think you've got to have great faith in like what Steve Cooper achieved, and give him the benefit of the doubt. How long the owner will give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm not 100% sure. But results will dictate that. But I do hope that Forest stay in the Premier League. As you rightly say, there is a good tradition there with us and them, with obviously them winning the European Cup as it was, and obviously being one of our closest rivals back in the 80s for league titles as well. So it'd be nice to see them stay in the Premier League, but obviously not at the expense of the result of the weekend.
What's your predicted lineup for Saturday?
Sorry, what was that?
What's your predictive lineup for Saturday?
Well, I think Alisson will play. I think Trent will play fullback. Gomez, Van Dijk. I think Robertson will come back into the starting 11. Midfield area is quite a bit different. I think Curtis Jones might have a start. Harvey Elliott might have a start. And difficult one to say who plays in the middle, whether it be a Henderson or whether it be a Fabinho or maybe even a Thiago. I think Thiago might get a rest. Up front, Salah will start. He likes to start most of the games. Firmino and Carvalho or Nunez. I'm not 100% sure. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously you've got the Ajax game the following Wednesday as well. So the manager will probably have sat down at the beginning of this month, and I know he doesn't like to go up ahead like the games, but I think they'll probably have looked at this month and identified kind of like the players to play in a lot of the games. But whether Nunez starts, the fact that he came off, the fact that he's had a slight hamstring, might be a case where he doesn't start. Carvalho might have a job to do on that left-hand side. Firmino through the middle, and maybe had Mohamed Salah on the right-hand side. Midfield is, to be honest with you, I think the midfield is a toss-up. Thiago's maybe played quite a few games. Maybe save him for the Ajax game. Maybe save Fabinho. I think, as I say, Curtis Jones coming on from off the bench, I think might be an indication that he might start at the weekend. Milner coming off the bench again might be an indication that he starts at the weekend as well. But it'd be nice for the manager, obviously, to have as many options as possible.
Yeah, what's key is also that that we have the points accumulated in the Champions League as we head into that Ajax match. So that's a nice buffer to have too when you're trying to manipulate the lineup and really protect against further injuries.
Yeah, well, I think we need a point from the Ajax game to qualify for the latter stages. So that is a plus. It's difficult. I don't think Jurgen Klopp has ever, in his 5 or 6 year tenure that he's been at the football club, I don't think he's ever really gone into a football match thinking that we're going to play for a draw. I'm sure he's going to the Johan Cruyff Stadium thinking that he'll pick a team to go and win the game as opposed to a team to go and draw the game. So I think the sooner we can get that qualification done, the better it will be. Napoli's going to be an interesting game when they come to Anfield, but it might be a dead rubber, to be quite honest with you. So it might be an opportunity where he can rest players and bring some of the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, the likes of Naby Keita, the likes of maybe Matip, and the likes of Curtis Jones back into the side to give them a little bit of game time. But obviously for the games coming up in November.
Yeah, it's a lot of games before the World Cup. Slapped in the middle of November till mid-December. But a few wins under our belt, and it does feel like we're gaining confidence again, because the first 8 games we were lacking. But it seems like we're playing more of a team now than like individuals that have just met each other that morning and put on the team sheet. But a good win against Rangers, a fantastic win against City, and then a hard-fought win against West Ham. So, bring on Forest, and then Ajax, and who do we play after that? Leeds.
Leeds, yeah.
The next couple of Premier League games, look good on paper. So, I hope for all 3 points. So, on that note, Gary, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us your views. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure, lads. Thank you.
And for everyone listening, thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.